Anne, Sasha, and the rest of the Wartwood Resistance make some excellent progress to victory over King Andrias and the Core's robot army. If you couldn't tell already, this video isn't going to be the typical breakdown of the 2 episodes released this weekend. It's going to be more rant-like because I had some personal gripes with the Mother of Olms episode in particular. Let me preface that I don't think this episode as a whole was bad, and my feelings toward this episode are pretty biased, so take these upcoming comments with a grain of salt, especially if this episode ended up being one of your new favorites after you finished watching it. The whole thing about this episode was the actual words of the Calamity Box prophecy was meant to be saved for the final few minutes of the episode. Mother Olms' memory has gotten worse and worse, so she can't remember what the prophecy is. This leads to Anne, Sasha, Sprig, and Polly going on a Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story style mission where they have to go inside Mother Olms' head and rub some kind of memory cream on her brain so she can remember the prophecy. I've seen these types of episodes before in cartoons where main characters go inside someone else. Jimmy Neutron did it, SpongeBob did it, they were all good, Amphibious included. Having Sasha of all characters being used for comedic relief was a nice change of pace, and it worked really well. Seeing how uncomfortable she got anytime she got near any of Mother Olms' body parts was genuinely funny, but I wasn't a huge fan of how the episode brought the entire journey those guys went through to essentially be pointless, since not only was the brain cream Mother gave them expired, but she had the prophecy written on the ceiling of her temple the entire time. I guess you could argue that if it wasn't for them failing inside her, then Hot Pop wouldn't have been inclined to bring up the possibility of Mother writing it down, but I don't know, man. The real kicker was the exact prophecy was something I technically already knew. Mother Olm verbatim said,
3 stars burning bright, come from beyond to expel the night. Should they fight or embrace the fall, their choice will determine the fate of all.
Which are the exact words that were in the book King Andrias quote-unquote found and showed to Anne at the beginning of the day at the aquarium. The only difference is the words in the book were in Utopian language and not English, or read out in English. That's where my personal bias comes in. Since I've always been a very analytical person when it comes to the shows I talk about on my channel, the meaning of this text was something I've known about since September of 2020. I can't remember who the original translator for this text was on social media, but these words have technically been public information around social media for over a year. So to watch the majority of the content of this episode only to find out I knew the prophecy already didn't feel super great. It's possible I had too high expectations for this episode since it wasn't a full 22-minute. Plus, I'm willing to bet my bottom dollar that the vast majority of Amphibia fans around the world had zero clue that Andrias' book said the same words. So all in all, it's really not that serious and doesn't really take away from Amphibia's story or anything. I'm just mainly salty that I wait until the end of the episode to find out it was something I already knew. On the bright side, there was some additional information Mother gave after reading these words that I didn't know. Mother Olm tells Anne and Sasha the powers they gain from the stones are rightfully theirs, and as long as Anne is still currently retaining part of the Calamity power from her stone, she'll be able to restore Sasha and Marcy's powers herself, which means going back to the temples are out of the question. They don't need to do that. It's just a matter of, does Anne need the Calamity box to be in her general vicinity to do this, to restore powers to Sasha and Marcy? It makes me think that'll be the case because something like Sasha, and hopefully Marcy too, seems like it'll be saved for the series finale or right before the series finale, like maybe in the episode All In. Mother Olm also mentioned that conquerors across time, i.e. King Andrias' ancestors, were so power hungry over the stones, they created something, the Core, that does not sleep and will not die. That makes me think that if the Core is essentially indestructible, like Mother Olm implies, will the combined powers of all 3 stones even be enough to take it down, or will they have to use an alternative option, like playing another song in the box to teleport the Core to a barren world where it won't be able to do anything to the rest of the multiverse? These revelations made me feed into the idea of Andrias and his friends being previous stone holders even more, because not only was it heavily implied Mother Olm met with the girl prank frog 1,000 years ago.
Ooh, frogs. Hasn't been one here in about 1,000 years.
But she was also the one who engraved the message about Mother into the vase. Why else would this frog know so much about Mother Olm if she wasn't involved with the prophecy herself? Plus, the words from the prophecy can be connected to how Andrias decided to put his family's desire for conquest over his friends. Should they fight or embrace the fall? He embraced the fall instead of fighting for what was right, which led to the prophecy being reset in a sense, only to come to light again 1,000 years later with Anne, Sasha, and Marcy. I hope this will all be cleared up next week when the Core and the King airs. I really hope so. Last thing I want to mention is that Matt himself confirmed on Twitter that the art of the frog holding some kind of energy source wasn't meant to be seen as the Core's true form or anything like that. It's actually a symbolic representation of Amphibia's greed and corruption. I like how it's confirmed to be seen as that. You know, it makes it feel a lot more interesting. As a standalone episode, it was decent. You know, cool how Whoopi Goldberg guest starred to voice Mother. I was wondering when I'd hear her voice in Amphibia because she was confirmed to be a guest star all the way back when season 3 began. But the next episode, Grime's Pupil, was definitely the one I favored this week. This episode more or less went how I expected it would, with Sprig and Grime at each other's throats trying to work together. But what I didn't expect was what they would need to be working together for in the long run for this episode. Grime's sister Beatrix, along with her miniature toad army, paid the Wartwood Resistance a visit to see if they were worthy of joining up with. Only problem is Grime and Sprig were sent to be the ones to meet her in front of the planter home, which leads to Sprig spilling the beans to Beatrix about how Grime lost to him during the failed siege of Notopia. This makes Beatrix think Grime has gone soft as a result of being part of the Wartwood Resistance if he would lose to Sprig, a resistance consisting of mainly frogs. The only way to get her to join is if Sprig in particular beats her in a one-on-one cage match, but if he loses, the Wartwood Resistance has to become part of Beatrix's army. Like I said, definitely not the direction I expected this episode to take. I thought it was going to be another random side mission similar to the one in Sprivy, but focused on Sprig and Grime's cooperation to complete it. It's very cool to have Beatrix back so early. You know, I figured she'd return, but not until the episode The Three Armies, if anything. The best way to win is to have Grime train Sprig before the fight. Sprig is of course displeased by this because in his eyes, what could the guy who lost him in Notopia possibly have to teach him? And he's of course still upset about how Grime tried to kill Hop Pop and was unfairly taxing his town in season 1. But it gets to the point where the two of them think the bickering is getting old, so they give training a shot. The main issue is Grime's trying to train Sprig, a frog, with tactics that are strictly meant for toads to use, so he's not doing very well. Though an encounter with several hyenas, hyena bee hybrids, gave the two of them a glimpse of their best respective fighting skills. Grime saw how impressive Sprig's speed and accuracy was, while Sprig was impressed with how well Grime funneled his rage to give him strength, knocking all those hyenas off his body at once. This leads into some more training with Grime focusing on Sprig's speed. The fight climax of this episode was very well done too, showing just enough of Sprig's dual training and speed focus as well as funneling rage correctly to overpower Beatrix in the end like Grime taught him. The majority of the fight felt very David and Goliath-esque to me, one of my favorite ancient stories growing up. After Beatrix loses, she upholds her end of the deal in a very sportsmanlike manner at that, now making the Wartwood Resistance even larger with her army added on. This makes me hopeful that Beatrix will actually be one of the characters to help Sasha or Grime in getting other toads across Amphibia to join the Resistance. She's a very cool character, so I'd love to see her be involved on that level on the same side as our MCs. Once again, I want to apologize if you guys were expecting a traditional episode breakdown. It's just the way the Mother of Olms episode in particular was structured, it felt more natural just to rant a little rather than do a traditional breakdown. It would have felt weird trying to do one considering my feelings about the episode. I'm hoping next week will be different though. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of these episodes. I'd love to see some thoughts about why y'all think these episodes, you know, mainly Mother of Olms, was better than I was making it out to be. I'm very curious to see. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like down below. It helps out a ton. But for now, I will see you guys next time. Peace out. Take care. Bye-bye.